in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. Tis I, Captain Logan, and joining me, old man Captain Logan, and joining me this evening as always is my good friend DJ Martinez, chat moderating and producing. Welcome, DJ. What's going on, man?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm stoked. We're gonna talk X-Men tonight.
X-Men.
Yeah, I have X-Men night on the Captain Logan Show. This Friday, quick plug, we're getting a new superhero rewind on X-Men Apocalypse. So I wanted to do this as kind of a tie-in. I've really got X-Men on my brain because I've been working on that all week or all last week. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about just anything and everything X-Men tonight, but in super chats and regular comments or regular, questions, pre-written questions as well. Feel free to talk about anything you want to tonight. This could still be an Ask Me Anything show, but I wanted to gear things mostly toward X-Men. It's been a while since we've done a theme show like that. And DJ, we actually do kind of have a lead-in topic for this that is related to sort of news. It's been kind of a slow news weekend, but I discovered recently that Feige actually went to Patrick Stewart and asked him if he would play Xavier again, and he declined. He said he wouldn't do it because Logan ended his character so well, and he didn't want to do that. But that changes everything in my mind for what I thought that the MCU might do with the X-Men. So we're going to need to talk about that, because I was apparently totally wrong in the way I was looking at that, if Feige is considering bringing back any of the original cast at all.
Yeah, I would not have expected that. That makes no sense to me.
It makes no sense to me either. So we'll talk about that. Thanks a lot for joining us, folks. If you're watching live, thanks for watching after the fact. If you're doing that, I see lots of folks in the comments already. There's Cinematographic, and Mutale is here, and Blue Dragon 5, as always. Dimwit Monkey, haven't seen in a while. Welcome, good to see you. There's Stussy, Gerbear, good evening, folks. As always, if you want to make sure that your question or comment about whatever you want to talk about this evening, including and beyond X-Men, you can leave a super chat in any dollar amount, and we are 85-90% these days funded by the audience, so we really appreciate anybody who does or has ever or plans to ever do that. But if you can't or don't want to, thanks a bunch for being here. The most important thing is just that we're all hanging out together, and you are awesome for popping in. We'll do as many pre-written things as we can, so feel free to ask questions throughout. That's one of the things that DJ is for. I want to say he's just here to moderate comments. DJ is awesome. We have wonderful conversations between us on the show, but direct your questions to DJ so that he can tell that what you want done with your comment is our talking about it, as opposed to a conversation that you're having with other folks there in the comments. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So like I said, apparently Kevin Feige went to Patrick Stewart, and I don't know how recently this was, and was like, hey, we want you in X-Men, and he was like, yeah, Logan was a great send-off, and I agree with that. I also wonder how much of that was because of what has happened with Picard, and if he might be thinking, well, that was a mistake, I shouldn't have come back and played that again either. I don't know that, of course, but I said as recently as I think last show, I didn't think, because there's been a lot of talk lately, maybe with the multiversal thing, that's how they'll introduce the mutants. They'll do like kind of another soft reboot thing where they'll take the mutants from the Fox universe and we'll get mutants, overall in the MCU because of that. Or maybe we'll do two things where we'll have a different set of mutants, a different set of those characters in the regular MCU, but we'll cross over some with the multiversal thing with the Fox X-Men, because we seem to be doing that with the Sony Spider-Man stuff also. And I said, incorrectly apparently, I don't think they would ever do that because there was so much bad blood between Fox and Disney or Marvel at large. For years, they were fighting over this property, and the comic side was trying to get as far away from mutants as possible. And because of Inhumans, we had that synergy thing where we had to try to replace the mutants with Inhumans, and we had hardly any merchandising of X-Men for a long time. And yeah, they own the property again, and so they are now the same company. But I really figured that they would, that there was so much kind of anger and bad blood and heartbreak with all of that they would want to go their own way and kind of make everybody forget about the Fox X-Men. And if not that, for no other reason than the last three movies in that franchise, besides Deadpool things, were not popular, did not do well, and have been kind of a laughing stock, it's maybe time to move on. I'm really shocked, DJ, that he went to Patrick Stewart. And that makes me wonder, of course, we'll have to do some more speculation this evening. What is the plan now? I mean, and I'm sorry, because we've talked about this way too much. What are they doing with the X-Men? How are they going to include the mutants in this franchise? But now all bets are really off, man.
I have no idea, dude. That's so weird, and that might prove that Feige is more on board and okay with this whole Spider-Man fiasco than we originally thought. If he's willing to bring in...
That's a great point. That makes me wonder at this point how much of that is Sony. Like you and I keep, assuming it must be that's them, trying to continue to reassert their authority with Spider-Man and, do a reunion thing with all the things they made so that people don't forget that they did Spider-Man first, and that even though they had two franchises that, I don't know if you could say Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi franchise was ultimately a failure at the end because the reason Spider-Man 4 didn't get made had nothing to do with money or anything, but that second franchise, obviously a failure. They didn't make that third one. They felt the need to make that deal with Marvel in order to keep Spider-Man going and reboot the whole thing. And then they're doing Venom without Spider-Man. Like it really seems like Sony has always been obsessed with like asserting their dominance with this character and making sure everybody gets Sony Spider-Man. But now I'm not 100% sure about that either.
Yeah, so it really makes you wonder how much does Feige think they need all this gimmicky stuff? Is he kind of worried about the MCU having staying power, and how much of this, another question, is because of last year and the potential fall of theaters, and how much do they think that they need all their movies to be huge events because that's the only kind of movies that are going to be in theaters. Everything else is going to go to streaming.
Hard to say. The thing is, on the DC side, the multiverse stuff has been in the pipeline for a long time, and well before the virus. So then the question is, how much of this is Marvel like trying to get in front of DC with that, and to, like the new kind of Cold War for superhero movies is not shared universe but is multiverse now.
Yeah, which I don't know, man. I think the MCU is about to get to a place that's just not for me because I'm not a multiverse. I'm not even like an alternate universe kind of guy. Like it's just not a type of storytelling that I've ever had much experience with or like had any interest in. And like it seems like that's what everything is going towards in the MCU. I don't know.
And you can't bank on nostalgia forever. There's gonna come a place where the new stuff has been around long enough that that's what people are more nostalgic for. So, who are you really making the multiverse things where you go back decades and decades to get old actors and characters who were in previous franchises before the superhero thing was the big juggernaut that it is? Like, who's that for at this point? I mean, like, I'm pushing 40. And we're going to get to a place where we're putting out stuff more for, in a weird way, my generation, but then it still doesn't feel like it's for me either. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that I don't know. That gets really weird. My hope is that Marvel will be smarter about it than I think DC will likely be. Although I hope they're both smart about it. Don't get me wrong. My prediction, but don't listen to me because I know nothing apparently. Gun to my head, if I had to make a prediction, I would say Cyclops visor to my head. I would say DC will run that into the ground and make the Flashpoint movie is popular, they'll make too much of what they're doing about the multiverse. There's already that talk about Michael Keaton being their Nick Fury. Marvel, I would think, by contrast, would do some multiversal things, but still make a lot of movies that have nothing to do with that at all. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Certainly, their first several TV shows don't seem to have too much to do with that yet. But I guess we'll see.
That's my worry, is that they do kind of like a comics thing where everything gets jumbled into one big story. Like, keep Blade, keep Shang-Chi, keep Miss Marvel, keep like the small one. Like, they don't need to be wrapped up in all this craziness. Like, keep those as individual stories that can bring new people on. That's what I think.
And I just think it can get complex to the point where I don't know how many viewers, I've said this before, I don't know how many viewers end up jumping ship, but I think it could start to feel like too much of a commitment for people. We're already worried about that with the Disney Plus shows on Marvel, with Marvel, and the question of how much those things will be necessary to appreciate the movies. But if it also starts to feel like you have to know a bunch of previous franchises that we thought were done, that could really turn some people off.
Well, that's the weird thing. Like, go to Connor. Connor's not that much younger than me. He's like 4 or 5 years, maybe 4, and he has seen like the big ones. He watched the Raimi Spider-Mans, but he hasn't seen, like, he's starting to go back now and see the Fantastic Fours and the Hulk and he had, like, people haven't, like, the kids that grew up during that time. Not everyone saw every single franchise like we were. We watched every, because it was like a comic book movie. Let's watch it. Like, they all came out. Like, the big ones.
And that's only because you and I were already into superheroes. Our generation did not all watch those the way this generation is watching all the superhero movies now.
Yeah,
that's a really important thing to consider. Is those were not the cultural touchstones that these things are. Like, they comparatively were not making the kinds of money that this stuff. Your Spider-Mans were, but your Ghost Riders and your Daredevils and all that stuff, they did fine. But they weren't 85% of Hollywood's take like superhero movies are now.
Yeah. Even the X-Men, like we talked about it. Deadpool made more than all the X-Men movies. Like, they were pretty well liked, and like we loved them, and a lot of people saw them, but they weren't like, it wasn't like everyone and their grandma was seeing the X-Men movies like the MCU movies.
Yeah, so, I have to say, I was really not happy with the announcement, as far as we understand it, of what's going on with Spider-Man 3 and all those franchises allegedly coming back, and some actors playing different versions of characters they played before, and some of them playing the same versions, and the whole multiversal thing, and the live-action Spider-Verse thing. I don't need that. I don't want that. I want Tom Holland's character to get to kind of come into his own a lot more than he has so far, and to finally get some tragedy in Peter Parker's life and tell more substantial stories, even though I like those first 2 films, and especially Homecoming. I mean, that was a really good starting place. I feel like we're still at a starting place. And man, am I tired of trilogies that end with finally we're getting things going. That's one of the big things I complain about in my Apocalypse review. And like I'm afraid we're going to do the same thing with Spider-Man. I don't want it with X-Men either, man. And that's a franchise that I care more about and have overall, even though it's got a lot of missteps, liked more even than any of the Spider-Man franchises. I think of myself as in a movie X-Men guy, and I didn't grow up as a big X-Men fan. Like, I'm not a big X-Men guy overall. I think of myself as a movie X-Men fan. X2 was my favorite superhero movie for a long time, and it's still in my top 3, top 5. And Days of Future Past kind of wrestles with it because I think it's also nearly as good, if not as good. But we already had the brilliant reunion movie for that. I don't want another reunion. I don't need all that stuff to come back.
No.
That continuity is double or triple broken. Stop messing with it. It's done. No, it's ruined beyond repair. And I'm not going to be fooled another time. And I don't care that Singer's not involved anymore. This franchise already got me excited about a soft reboot and then immediately screwed it up the very next movie. Even if they do another brilliant soft reboot, I'm not going to trust it. You'd be crazy to.
And I don't want that to be the introduction to this new franchise. Like, at least we got Homecoming. We won't even get the X-Men Homecoming. We'll just start with this crazy multiverse soft reboot.
That's another really good point. Sure. Well, and I've heard some people say like maybe it's just it was supposed to be just a one-off or something where like Feige specifically just wanted Patrick Stewart's Xavier and nothing else from that franchise, but and I don't even know what that looks like. And who knows? And if that's what they were doing, I would like that more, whatever that was, just to not, if he feels like you have to have some sort of little pass the torch thing for some reason. I get, and again, I'm a huge fan of it. I get that franchise was very popular and that we had the same, even though it could not keep its own continuity straight 3 movies in, much less after 15, 16, overall, or however many they made of movies all in that franchise. It was the longest running ongoing superhero continuity we've had, and only recently is done. So we had 20 years of the same continuity with no reboots. And you go look at Spider-Man and look how quickly we rebooted Spider-Man. Like, it's crazy how long that went. And it cheated a lot because it had to constantly retcon itself and rework itself. And it's ridiculous. Like, X-Men always had a hard time keeping everything straight because it was such a complex soap opera. Like, after 2 movies, they couldn't do it.
Yeah, it really makes the MCU look even more amazing.
It really does.
With the little quibbles we have in the MCU, it looks like a work of art compared to the X-Men.
I can't even complain about the way they set up Thanos and gave us a totally different Thanos if you go back and look at the X-Men movies.
But yeah, I don't understand bringing Patrick, even if it is a cameo, that's so weird. I mean, I guess if it's just a one-off, that's one thing. But the man's 80 years old.
And it doesn't matter now because it's not going to happen. And that's what was so, or at least apparently it's not. I mean, I guess anything is possible. Things change all the time. I guess they could throw enough money at him, and for whatever reason, he'd finally throw his hands up in the air. But the way I've heard him talk about Logan, I really doubt that will happen. Because for the longest time, he was like, yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime they'll have me. And then they did Logan. He's like, and I agree with them. And I've had my issues with Patrick Stewart over the last couple of years because of things that he said with Picard and the way that show was handled and how much I know he was involved in the storytelling process with that. But, I mean, I have to be honest with you, it has colored my opinion of him a little bit. But I don't disagree with him that was a really tragic, super sad, bitter end, obviously for Xavier, but a brilliant end. I get why he wouldn't want to do it again. You can't top that. Why would you try?
Yeah, same thing with Hugh Jackman. Obviously, hopefully he would refuse any kind of cameo that they offered him.
Mutalia, I highly doubt Feige wants Stewart to play Professor X for another decade. Yeah, I mean, I think he would have him come in one time, but what I'm saying is, it's really, my immediate assumption was, okay, so if he's talking to Patrick Stewart, that means that he wants some semblance of the Fox X-Men franchise to survive. And I don't need that. I think, DJ, the best way to handle the transition, or lack thereof, is, again, with Deadpool. And not in having other characters there, but just in Deadpool knowing about the other franchise. He should be us, the audience. He should be like, like when he said these timelines were confusing with Deadpool 1. He is now a rebooted version of himself, and he knows he's rebooted because he can break the fourth wall. That should be all that is, though.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe he was in Deadpool 3. Maybe he wanted him to do a little joke in Deadpool 3. I don't know. That could have been it.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't want to do that visually in any way, personally. Like, I would just want that to be Deadpool talking, and just, like, I know I was in another franchise. The whole world looks different now. That's weird. Like, don't show us anything from the old franchise. Just get away from it. I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that whole thing. We'll see if there's anything to it down the road. And it could be that whatever his plans were, if Stewart's not going to do it, then he changes everything and doesn't have any connections to the Fox X-Men. Because I don't know what his plan was, certainly. But what's really curious about this is he said we wouldn't get X-Men for 5 years, and he's talking to Patrick Stewart, who's an 80-year-old man. So is he going to play it at 85? And was Feige just going to assume that he'd be? And I mean, this sounds morbid, but like once we're talking about actors that age, I wouldn't be making plans 5 years out.
Yeah, you gotta think about that. I mean, they had to think about it with Chadwick Boseman. They have to think about stuff like that when you're making these movies so far ahead. I just hope that Feige's backup plan is having Chris Evans play Human Torch again. And he comes in. He's the one that brings the...
Honestly, that would be kind of a coup. That would be fun. And yeah, I don't need any of that crossover stuff because it's funny. Because the MCU is so, like, obviously solidified in a bazillion-dollar franchise and what people think of when they think of Marvel now. DC is likely wanting to go to old franchises and open up the multiverse because they have an identity crisis there and they're trying to figure out who they are and they feel the need to bank on nostalgia. Marvel doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. Are they just trying to beat DC at it because they can? They're like, this is the one thing they have on us. Let's just take this from them.
I can guess all day at the motivation. It is not a clear motivation.
It's weird. Like I said, unless he's super worried about the staying power going forward after the Infinity Saga is over. I don't know.
Guys, let's go ahead and move on to some questions now. DJ, the first one I saw that I would like to go ahead and throw out real quick is actually for you. Stussy wanted to know if you have seen and if you like Turtles Forever. And I don't think you and I have ever talked about that, so I'm curious to know that too. Is that a movie that you like?
I have seen it once after I watched through the animated show, and it was all right. I liked it. It wasn't like my favorite thing because I never watched the 80s shows, so that was like nothing for me. Like them coming in was just kind of like I just took it as its own movie in the TMNT universe because that's basically what it was. But yeah, I liked it. And I really like you know this. I love Spider-Verse because that is it doesn't even need to be an alternate universe thing. Like, well, I mean, thematically it does, but plot-wise, they could just bump into each other in the same city. Like it's not, what I just don't want this crazy like convoluted plots where they're like going through different dimensions and it gets like
exactly.
Like, I just need the story to work, and that's just like a conceit. That's what Spider-Verse is.
Precisely. That's exactly right. That's exactly what that should be. And I don't trust for a minute that that's what Flashpoint's going to be. I don't, or Flash or whatever the heck we're calling that. I don't trust that for a minute. And I'm hoping that MCU is smarter about it when they start doing that kind of thing. But when I hear Spider-Man 3 is going to have every Spider-Man thing from every movie that you've ever heard of, I'm like, well, that's the story then, right? Like,
it's going to take over.
I don't see how that's not just a giant gimmick where the whole thing is about that. I've always said this with crossovers. I want to get the conceit, like as you say, that gets the ball rolling out of the way first. It's like origin movies without substance, right? I mean, it's exactly the same kind of thing, where if there was a story somehow in how do you get these two universes together? I mean, okay, I don't know what that is. Usually that's just the gimmick to get the ball rolling. You want to see Batman and the Ninja Turtles together in a movie together. Fine. You either do what the animated movie did and say they both live in the same universe, or you get your interdimensional thing out of the way in the first 5 minutes. But don't make the whole movie about the device.
Yeah. That's what I'm worried about. Hopefully I'll be pleasantly surprised.
And yeah, a lot of Turtles Forever was kind of a nostalgia fest and was about the novelty of all that, but it told a story too, and it had a lot of fun with all the crossover. Like it was all about the differences with those shows. Like it was something of a meta thing where it was like, let's explore what that Shredder and Krang was versus the Shredder / Krang of the 03 series. They got clever with it, and that's part of why that worked, and that's why I like the Batman and Turtles movie too. I'm not saying everything has to be like the deepest, most poignant, most thought-provoking thing either. Like those are, I don't even know if I want to say like good trash. I don't know if I would call those trash, but those are just kind of like fun romps that if you're creative and clever enough about it, and what's supposed to be cool about it isn't just that you did it, there could be fun to have there too. I don't mean to say that you can't have a ride. That's mostly what the thing is for, but just put that up front and make it clear, and don't make me think that it's supposed to be smarter than it is. Those are both movies that are not pretending to be any more than they are, which is why they work.
Mm-hmm. And it's a little more complicated when you're doing that in a series of 22, 23 movies that have not been doing that the whole time.
Senior Nerd just put in a whole bunch of question marks, so I can answer that question, I guess, but I don't by
can
saying
you? If he's just questioning this show in general. I don't know if I can answer.
So is the question why is Captain Logan? Yeah, I guess that's a little existential. I guess I can't answer that. But yeah, I was just wondering why you just wrote a bunch of question marks. DJ, let's go ahead and go deeper into the phones, sir, and
right.
Let's find out what people want to chat about this evening, X-Men or otherwise.
All right. Well, the first question in the chat I saw directed at me was from Blue Dragon 5, and he wants to know what your pitch. Oh, a pitch question. Get ready. What would your pitch be for a Cyclops-centric MCU movie or limited series?
Wow.
Centric.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, if it's Cyclops by himself, the only stories I've really read that way have been about Cyclops in space with his dad. And I don't know how badly I need that. Like, that could be cool. I mean, like Cyclops and Corsair going out and, doing stuff with the Shi'ar and, whatever other, I have a little Landra in there and just whatever. And maybe Xavier, but that's about it. Like, that could be cool, but I can't think of anything that jumps out. Nothing jumps out at me where I'm like, this would be a killer Cyclops movie. I'm not a big Cyclops fan personally. Like, I don't dislike that character, but he's one of those guys in comics that to me has always been like Iron Man, where I kind of need him with a team. I don't love reading him by himself. Yeah. He's got to be with a group of people.
I'm that way with all the X-Men. I don't need any individual X-Men movies. I kind of want a good small team movie because we always go way too big.
I'm that way with everybody but Wolverine, just because he has a long history of stories on his own.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of good stuff to mine from and crib from solo Wolverine stories. And obviously, I adore Logan, and I think the Wolverine is a good, solid flick. And so, I mean, we've done that well before. But I'm not even saying that I need MCU to do more Wolverine movies. I'm just saying that that's the only character that I've ever really cared that much to see solo stuff with. And I guess Deadpool, but I don't even think of him as, he's in the X-Men world, but he's not an X-Man, certainly. But yeah, like, Fox was going to make that Gambit movie. I was always like, I mean, okay. Like, and to be fair, Gambit has a history of solo stories too, but they're more like smaller team stuff where he's leading, like Gambit and the Externals. Like, he's usually leading a smaller group of people. But the X-Men movies, until we got to the later Wolverine stuff, have never been able to do a solo thing that didn't also just immediately turn into a team thing, like X-Men Origins, because it's like, well, we have X-Men in the title.
We'll do Psyche and Pals 4, How All This Mess
began. Exactly.
Yeah, what I would think, this just came to me. I would like to see an X-Men thing tackle the Savage Land for like a whole movie. Like, I don't know how that would work, but I just watched King Kong with my son, and like a movie where they crash land on this island and they're like going around figuring, like, more of a like an adventure movie, I guess. That'd be a weird change of pace for the X-Men if they're just like stranded and having to deal with all this stuff. It wouldn't be very, I don't know how character driven it would be. But.
It's weird that it could be though, but you're right. Yeah, an adventure thing. It's weird that we did that many X-Men movies and we've never gone to Genosha. We've never gone to the Savage Land.
Well, because we did X-Men. We did Magneto every single time. We never did anything.
But you still could have done some of that stuff where he goes there. I mean, in the cartoon show, Magneto is connected to the Savage Land. Although, Eric and I talked about this last week, when we were hanging out together, and I mentioned the Savage Land, and he said he wasn't sure if Fox at the time had the rights to it, if that's a thing that's wrapped up with Fantastic Four and other things, or if that is indeed an X-Men thing. I'm actually not sure. But there's other stuff that we've never done. Asteroid M, like it's weird. You could do a Genosha story. Where they're like stranded on that island and trying to decide if the like civilization that's been set up there is pro or anti-mutant, and what exactly they're doing with the mutants there. And you could do a Cyclops Jean story. Like if I was gonna do an off. A one-off Cyclops thing, I would have it be like a married Cyclops and Jean, and that would also be the way to introduce Sinister, because that's one of his big things, is going after Cyclops and Jean, trying to get their DNA and trying to start a like race of mutants that he could control as an army. So yeah, I mean, you can do that, and I really want to start. When they start making X-Men movies again at MCU, I'm hoping that they focus on one or two characters in a movie. So you can have a team of several characters, but do what the best of them have done, especially in the First Class Days of Future Past era, and focus on a couple of people, and then let everybody else act as supporting characters. And certainly draw them and make us care about them, but and don't make it the same people every movie. So like the first franchise, everything's Wolverine. And the second franchise, everything is Xavier Magneto, which is fine for the first two movies, but then after that, they didn't know what to do with those characters because they pretended like they were still making a trilogy, and they had pretty much effectively finished their trilogy in two movies. And so after that, that should have been Cyclops and Jean's movie or somebody else's movie. So it'd be cool if when we start doing this again, we go, Cyclops is the leader. Let's let him have a character piece in the first movie. And then in the next movie, let's let Storm have a character piece. And then, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I don't know if you talk about this in your rewind at all, but I wonder how much of how terrible Apocalypse was is because they made a trilogy without the middle movie, and then there's just like this tacked on epilogue at the end. Like if they had made if Days of Future Past had been the third movie, I think they could have been freer to not have Apocalypse try to cram into being a trilogy when it's really not at all.
I don't want to just read my rewind on air when I'm going to post that in a few days, but I have a whole section on that because
awesome.
Matthew Vaughn famously,
I have not read this yet.
Matthew Vaughn famously said that maybe the main reason that he left Days of Future, I guess the main reason he left Days of Future Past, because he plotted most of that. I mean, a lot of that movie is his. He's got story credit but not script credit. He claims he wrote that movie, and I don't know how much of they changed. But I have a whole thing about how the Apocalypse is probably as bad as it is, and that franchise is ruined because Vaughn is gone, and it makes you wonder how much of what was good about Days of Future Past had to do with Singer, but anyway, he famously said the reason he left was because he wanted Days of Future Past to be the third movie, and he didn't think it made any sense to do that second. And you're gonna do two big, like, epic world-ending kinds of events in a row. Like, the last thing on Earth you'd want to do is try to outdo Days of Future Past and on scale. And what they made was a disaster movie with Apocalypse. It was also a disaster of a movie, but it was a disaster movie.
After you said Vaughn is gone, I just want a children's story that documents the behind-the-scenes footage of that whole situation in a children's book. Vaughn is gone.
Yeah, with like really cute art with like big heads and little bodies, and then yeah, that sounds
Singer and Vaughn shouting at each other.
Dave Atkins, my number one guilty pleasure would be to see a Marvel Zombies movie, panel-to-panel live action with the MCU cast. Just seeing Chris Evans rip people to shreds would be horrifying, and those would be the kinds of things that would make me okay with bringing those actors back. Anybody that we've written out.
Elseworld stuff. Have Patrick Stewart bite someone's head off. Sure.
Yeah, if you wanted to do Fox X-Men Zombies, I'm all for that.
Only if you get everybody back. I mean, both Juggernauts. I want British Juggernaut from X3 back.
I wonder if Patrick Stewart would come back from that for that. If it was like, no, you don't understand. We're not going to wipe away anything that we did. It's a different universe, and you're a zombie now, and you're going to crawl around because you can't stand up, like out of your wheelchair trying to bite people.
He just doesn't have legs. They CGI out his legs. He's just a torso crawling around.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be great.
That's horrifying. All right, let's see. I got a super chat from John Ty. Is the dual like what? Should we get into other things or try to do some X-Men stuff first?
Let's do some more X-Men stuff first, if we can, okay. If that's all right.
Yeah, I'll jump around. Mr. Roboto, $5 super chat. X3, Professor X's body is destroyed. He takes over another body, which is hinted at. Would a mutant psychic no longer be a mutant?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Great question. Yeah. What is, and that gets into an Apocalypse thing too, because, and I didn't complain about this in the rewind because I had plenty of other things to complain about. But apparently the way Apocalypse's powers work in that movie is he can transfer his consciousness from body to body and somehow takes each set of powers with him. And so apparently consciousness includes DNA or something. Like, I don't really understand how that works. So yeah, I would think if you took Professor Xavier's consciousness out of his body and put it in somebody else's, like we did at the end of X3, he wouldn't still have his powers anymore.
Yeah, he'd just be...
But according to Apocalypse, you would. But I don't know why that is. But that also might just be his power. You see what I'm saying? Like, his power might be being able to do that. But I don't know why Xavier would. If that, you see what I'm saying? It's murky. It's weird.
Weird. Yeah, I've never thought about that. I always assumed he would just be, he's Professor X with legs now. But no, yeah, he might just be that dude.
Well, and and he shouldn't look like Professor X either, and
no.
you don't get the sense at the end of X3 that he does, of course, because you know that there was a mutant that was lying on that bed that he transferred his consciousness into, because that person was set up earlier in the movie, and then they pay it off in the after credits. When you get to the end of the Wolverine, and they do the after credit scene setting up Days of Future Past, it's a big reveal and a big deal that Professor X is there in his regular body in a wheelchair. And Wolverine has the line, "How is this possible?" And the assumption is that we'll find out in Days of Future Past. And they never tell us. We don't know how exactly that happened. And I always wanted to know not just how did he get his body back. And remember, this is before the world goes to hell. This is before we get to the apocalyptic future, the dystopian future of Days of Future Past. It's like a year or two after the events of the Wolverine that he's there. And he's been working with Magneto apparently for a little while. And my question wasn't just why does he look like that, but how is he also paralyzed? Like, why is he also paralyzed? Well, you know the answer. It's just so that we can get the classic aesthetic from the mythology of the previous franchise that we never thought we'd see again. That's the only reason it's there. Like, we'll explain it later. And then they didn't bother at all.
Well, it's better than spending a 20-minute chunk of your movie explaining it really poorly, like they did in Apocalypse with the other stinger that they explained with Weapon X.
Stussy said it was his twin brother. Was it a twin brother? I'm fuzzy on that. I always forget who that character was supposed to be that he transfers his mind into.
It's his twin brother. That's even more ridiculous.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous. And that's, as far as I know, not a comics thing.
His twin paralyzed brother. Also paralyzed twin brother.
I know he's got his half-brother in, or is it an adopted brother, I forget, in Juggernaut. But in the comics, does he have a twin brother? Because that's even more contrived. Like,
that's crazy.
Anyways. I agree with that. Mutali says, Days of Future Past was more of an apocalypse than the Apocalypse movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
we beat them before it was a full-on apocalypse. And they like to really wipe under the rug how much damage was actually done in that movie. Like, there's all these back-off shots where you see, like, all this, destruction and carnage, but conveniently, we kind of pretend like nobody dies. And in his commentary, Singer complains about movies that, and you can tell he's kind of maybe digging at BVS, but he doesn't say that. And he is complaining about, because that movie, that's assuming that movie had come out by the time that he was making that commentary, but I bet it had. Anyway, he is talking about movies that have, like, carnage on a grand scale, kill a whole bunch of people, and then you get to the end and everybody is like happy-go-lucky, and he's patting himself on the back for not doing that, and that's exactly what he did. Like, that's what that movie is. And he'll, like, make excuses. His commentary is hilarious, by the way. He says, he says a lot of ridiculous things, and I point out a number of them in my rewind. And he keeps trying to make excuses for it, where he's like, "See, it doesn't look like anybody's done." Or there's this place where there's a school bus that gets picked up, and he's like, "If you squint, if you look really close, you can see the children running away from the bus."
Man, that sounds more entertaining than the movie. I'll watch that with you.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Actually, that would not be a bad commentary on a commentary. I've been looking for one for a long time. That commentary is insane.
That's amazing.
It's pretty nuts. And again, I don't want to give too much away about the rewind, because this would be ruining a really hilarious thing that I found. There's a thing he says in the first 5 minutes that blew my mind, and I was like, "What are you doing? Did you really do that? That's amazing." There's a thing. I'll give you a hint. I don't want to spoil it. There's a thing he implies in the opening credits that's insane. Anyway,
I can't wait. I'm excited.
That's coming on Friday night, 7 o'clock. You'll have that rewind.
Oh, the most hyped rewind ever. You're doing a good job of selling it, man.
I'm not doing that on purpose. It's just on my mind. I wrote all day over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
Man,
Stussy, more insane than the Spawn commentary. I mean, probably not more insane, because I don't know if that's possible, but it's up there.
Let's see. What do we got?
It's not Schwarzenegger on anything, but...
Okay, this is... We're gonna slowly go down from X-Men. That's kind of peripherally X-Men related. I'm gonna ask a full-on X-Men related.
Sure.
This is from T-Edge1. He says, at Blob.
Hi, Tom.
I don't know why he's calling me Blob, but he says, if you were a mutant...
Hey, did he just call you Blob?
He did. Or you. One of us. I don't know. It just says, at Blob. If you were a mutant, what mutant team would you be on? Example, the Brotherhood,
you just call me
X-Force. Great show tonight. Are mutants dangerous? Wow, it just throws on a big question right there at the end.
Here's a compliment. Oh, by the way, here's a really heavy question, right? Okay, so he's asking what team we would be on if we were on a team. Is that what he's saying?
If we were a mutant, yeah.
Uncanny Avengers.
There we go.
Is my answer. I think it'd be fun to be on a mutant team with also Avengers. The blend of those characters was really cool and really interesting, and that's one of, if not my favorite team book of all time. I'm not a big team book guy. I love what Remender did on that book. It's wonderful. But yeah, that'd be fun. I don't know. Do you have an answer?
No, I mean, I would just like to be, if I was on, I mean, obviously probably X-Men, but I would want to be on like much like when I played basketball in 9th grade. I wouldn't like to be on like the first 5 X-Men or like the beginning of Ultimate X-Men. I want to be where there's a lot of people and I don't have to get much action. I just kind of, I'm a card carrying member, but I don't have to do anything. I just I ride the bench because there's so many X-Men on the team that I don't have to do much.
That's really funny. Yeah, you're just an alternate.
Yeah. I'll be the B team or even the C team. I mean, there's so many, especially in the 90s.
A bunch of people in the comments were like, "No, he said Bob. He didn't say Bob."
You idiot! Said Bob.
And then what was that tacked on question at the end again?
Are mutants dangerous? Yep.
They certainly can be. Case by case basis. Yes,
it depends. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest. That might be the biggest. It depends of all time.
Yeah. And then the big question that X-Men is always asking, that's so fascinating, of course, is what do you do about it? How do you not curb people's freedoms and treat everyone as equals and treat people like, mutants like human beings that do need to be curtailed in some way, not because there's anything wrong with them, not because you hate them, not because you're a bigot, but because just logistically, just realistically, if they're constantly shooting fire out of their eyes and you can't do anything to stop that, they're going to be killing people. And like if making sure that they keep their freedoms and are being treated like a regular human being means also letting a bunch of other people die and lose their lives, then that seems unreasonable. So what do you do? And that's always been the most fascinating thing about that question, and where X-Men is elevated beyond simply a racism allegory, and talking beyond that, and I mean the racism allegory is important and it can be interesting as well, but we move it past that, and in comics and in the movies, and make it also about the idea of gifted individuals and people with not superpowers, but the allegory is people who are able to do things that other people can't, and the ways in which a gift can also be a curse, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. From Christian Ogden, we've talked about this. How do you tackle someone like Magneto the further away we get from World War II? Shouldn't he be over 100 by now?
Yeah, we have talked about this, but I don't mind going over it again real quick. You have to
it gets later and later every year, so it gets more.
Yeah, at this point, you certainly can't just have the regular World War II thing and say that it's happening now, and you also can't get away with not too distant future, because it would be the not too that long ago past, I think. At that point, so days of future not too long ago past. What you have to do is either give Magneto a different backstory entirely, and I don't know what exactly that is. It doesn't have to be related to a war. It could be terrorism. It could be anything. You could do he'd be really young right now, but you could do just off the top of my head, a post 9/11 thing where the bigotry is about domestic terrorism. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do, and I don't know if it's hard to come up with anything as poignant and potent as World War II, because the good guys and bad guys seemed so clear there. The allegory there is really obvious, where you're going. Nazis were the scary evil aggressors. The Jews were clearly the victims there, and it's really obvious that for totally like no good reason, very arbitrary reasons, the Jews were decided they were lesser and inferior to white-faced, blue-eyed people, and so it's just the perfect allegory. The farther we get away from it, the more it sucks that we can't use it like we used to. The only other thing to do is the Captain America thing, where you put him in ice, or you have him in some other sort of cryostasis, something like that. Or you could do some kind of time travel thing.
Yeah, if you wanted to keep that exact allegory, yeah. I don't know. That character might get a little less interesting if they just kind of try to make up their own thing.
AMC Comics, I agree with that. He says, I think you could reinterpret Magneto's origin as having grown up in Soviet-controlled Poland, and in doing something like that, I mean, you're going to be more understated. It's not going to resonate with people in the same way, because you have to educate them first. When you see the imagery of Auschwitz, most of us immediately know what that means, and we're like, oh, the natural aggressors. What doing later Poland would give you is the history, the fact that some of those problems continued, permeated. It's really easy to look at the end of World War II as the end of all of those problems, and it's easy to forget that some of those issues permeated, and of course they did, in countries controlled by the Soviet Union past that. And that was a thing I learned a little bit about when I went to the eastern side of Germany when a few years ago, and some of the places that were once Soviet controlled. And you could see such a difference just in even to this day, or to that day 3-4 years ago, the difference in how people acted and how you would be treated in West Germany versus East Germany. In East Germany, everybody is so much more like serious and no nonsense, and you can tell that there's still residual issues that people remember that being occupied the way it was. And so I agree with that. That's a really good idea, but you'd have to educate, sort of like that first episode of Watchmen, like you'd have to educate people on a thing that we should know about that a lot of people just don't.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Kellen O'Rourke brought up the opening scene of X-Men
Iron Curtain and all that. Yeah, AMC, you're absolutely right. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, Kellen O'Rourke brought up the opening scene of X-Men, the first X-Men. He says it's one of the most powerful and important moments in the comic book movies. It blows my mind. I don't even think about that, but it blows my mind that that scene takes place in the same universe as Apocalypse. Like, what happened? Like that was pretty shocking to me.
And that they had the audacity to go back to it in that movie. They have Apocalypse taking Magneto to Auschwitz, where they keep acting like it's at all of the same situation. What happened with his family and when he was a kid, and what happens with his wife and daughter in that movie. It's completely preposterous. You'll hear more about that on Friday if you choose to.
I
click
keep
on that
getting
video.
you back to it. I'm sorry. I'm not trying.
Yeah, no, you're right though. It's nuts. But you know what else is weird? Before I had even announced to the channel that I was doing Apocalypse on Thursday, we kept going to that movie, and it wasn't all me the first time, because you mentioned that after the show, and I was like, well, I kept bringing it up. I went back and listened to that show, and the first time it comes up was not me. Like, Apocalypse came up all evening long, and at least half the time it wasn't me. It was really funny.
It's just in the zeitgeist on the channel, apparently.
I think, but going back to that scene, I honestly think that by itself has something to do with why superhero movies ended up permeating and helped to lead us to a place where we could make movies based on comics that people took seriously. I think starting with X-Men was important. That's not a perfect movie. It's a setup movie. It's not a great story. You've heard all this before, but it taking itself seriously enough to put Magneto's backstory like that there, and open with such a heart-wrenching scene that we all understand, and just like putting that in such a realistic context, helps to lead us to a place where we can get our Dark Knights and our Iron Mans and movies like that later.
Yeah, it's not a great story, but it set up the world of X-Men, and that's what it needed to do as one of the first ones.
And it set up the world of modern superhero movies, maybe. I think it might not be going too far to say that.
Thanos Survivor number 21.
Hi.
Who would you pick to direct the MCU X-Men films?
Real quick, I want to mention this. I want to address this. Cinematographic, what about Blade? Every time I say that, somebody brings up Blade. Every single time. And I just have to say, yes, I get it. Blade came before X-Men. It was based on a comic. It was popular. It has something to do with getting superhero movies more popular, or movies that look like comics more popular. But as I've always said, I'm going to go over this again. Nobody knew that was based on a comic, or at least the majority of the audience members that went and saw that. That was not popular because it was a comic book thing, because it was a superhero thing, and it was not grounded and realistic in the way, comparatively, that X-Men was. So I don't think that alone would have, like, let's say that 4 or 5 years go by and we don't make another superhero movie for a while. I don't think Blade by itself gets us to that point. I think X-Men was really important because it was a comic thing. People knew it was a comic thing, and people had assumptions about what that would look on the big screen, and it dashed them. But yeah, I'm not, and I love Blade, and I especially love Blade 2. I'm not knocking the importance of that for stylistic superhero. I think that was influential on the movies that got made before it opened the floodgates to help make sure that a bunch more things, like, at least based on comics, that got made. But it certainly had something to do with the fact that we were able to make movies that look like that. Maybe that's semantics, honestly. So yes, it's in there. But I'm still going to say X-Men was necessary.
No, we actually wish that Blade had more of an impact, because we would have liked more comic booky type movies. They were all X-Men. Everything was being X-Men.
And playing it too safe, yeah. Blade took crazy chances. Crazy chances. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Thanos Survivor. Who would you pick to direct the MCU movies? MCU X-Men films?
Yeah. First of all, this goes without saying, but I want entirely new blood, and don't go back to anybody that ever worked on those ever. And I mean, I hate to say, even Vaughn, just because if he wouldn't do it now, but like just because he's doing other things. But like, I would want to see like no remnants of the old franchise. I really want to see a straight up X-Men reboot at this point. I I think it's been long enough now, don't you?
20 years.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't want Kinberg or those guys anywhere near it. I think it's really interesting that Feige is still running MCU, and he's been involved with this stuff going all the way back to the first X-Men movie. He was there for that movie. I think a lot of people, maybe people don't know that. I don't know. But he goes all the way back to that. So he's going to be, and that's maybe partly why he's interested in bringing back some of the Fox stuff, because it's nostalgic for him, because he was connected to that stuff. And so you can't have 100% new blood, because Feige runs Marvel and he was there from the beginning. But I don't know, DJ, do any names jump to mind?
I'll just tell you some that are coming up in the chat.
Yeah.
Brad Bird is coming up a lot. Patty Jenkins from Dagon Spear.
Yeah.
Dimwit Monkey says either Landis would be either great or terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Mutali says not Joss Whedon.
Yeah, Del Toro could be cool.
Yeah, that'd be
somebody mentioned that. Brad Bird comes up every time we talk about anything that's ever been a lighthearted superhero thing. Yeah, that could be okay. Man, I'm trying to think of a cool kind of off the beaten path thing. Nothing is immediately jumping to mind. I'm thinking of people that aren't working anymore or haven't had big careers for a long time. I would be fascinated to see the Alex Proyas X-Men movie. There's guys like that. Dark City, The Crow. It'd be really interesting to see that guy do an X-Men movie.
I like someone who's kind of like we did with Spider-Man for the second one. Someone who's better like the interpersonal relationships and stuff, because we've never been good with any romantic relationships in X-Men.
Yeah, no, that's true. They're entirely superficial, but I don't know who that guy is.
I don't know who that is now.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who's been doing the Spider-Man movies, I think, could make a really good X-Men movie.
But isn't he doing Fantastic Four?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I want to get away from anybody that's currently working there. I mean, Ryan Coogler would be good, but I don't think he'd do it. But
that's a good question. We're not good at that kind of question, though.
I like the idea of Vince Gilligan writing an X-Men movie. Dave Atkins, I'm with you there. That'd be really cool. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with Alex Proyas because I just think that'd be fascinating. All right, DJ, what else? Where are we going?
We're going for T-Edge1, gives us a $10 super chat.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
Man. Could they make Magneto Mexican and deal with the cages issue if you had a non-superhero... I'm just going to read it how it's typed because I think it's funny. If you had a non-supper power, what would it be? I'd be a living mood ring. My skin would change depending upon my mood. You rock. So if you had a supper power, what would it be?
Does he just mean
I think he says
any
if you had a
superpower? What does superpower mean? Oh, does he mean just something that's like not like all that useful?
Oh, that's actually a good question. Like Sky High, where he just melts, or like a Mystery Men type thing.
Yeah.
Oh, let me see. That if I had one, but it's an interesting question because I don't want it.
Yeah, I would want the ability to already know a lot more about music theory than I do. Like, I would want to just suddenly be able to play the piano and read music better than I do, and all of it. Just not have to go through the work to actually be good at music, I think, would be... Yeah,
not superhumanly good at it, but just
humanly
good at it.
Yeah, super humanly proficient. Yeah. And then what was that first question?
He said they could make Magneto Mexican and deal with the cages, but wouldn't he have to be like 10?
Yeah, I wouldn't do exactly that, of course, right now, but the idea of like changing his ethnicity and or nationality and putting him in some other situation, I mean, you can come up with a million different things that could be.
Yeah, well, and earlier we were talking about, I was going to say you could have made him black and the civil rights movement, but that would only buy you like 10 or 20 years.
But it wouldn't have to be civil rights. You could go to Africa. You could, you could deal with human rights violations in Africa if you were going to have a black Magneto. There'd be apartheid and stuff. Like, you could do that kind of thing. Yeah,
I was just trying to think of something that was big enough that people already knew about it. But like you said, you'd have to educate people.
that's a thing that more people know about than some other things, but also they ought to. There's some nutso horrifying things in just the last couple of decades in Africa that nobody talks about.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. If you
and I'm not saying necessarily that that's what I would want, but you could do that. That could be interesting. I don't want to get into yet another conversation about when it's okay to like race change or gender flip or that sort of thing. But that would be a way to get Magneto a backstory that's more recent.
Yeah. And if you were going to change him from Jewish anyway, you'd already be kind of changing the character dramatically anyway. So.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, sure.
From Ryder, just popped up, super chat, does Dark Phoenix work better as 2 in the trilogy?
Maybe? So he's suggesting that in your second movie you would... I guess what he would be saying with that is, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this is the only thing it could be. We bring in Jean and Scott and all of that in the second movie, and then the third movie would go ahead and do Days of Future Past. You end up with... Days of Future Past would be too different of a story, and I mean, like, it could potentially work, but you'd have so many... You'd have way more characters at that point, or you would have to find a way to write out a bunch of characters that would then have to come back later. So that gets weird, because Days of Future Past... I mean, because I always like this idea. The idea at the beginning of Days of Future Past is Xavier never actually got the school off the ground. And if you did Dark Phoenix second, you'd have to start the school and then either tell a completely different story or shut the school down after you had main characters that you're not going to kill off the way you killed off the First Class from First Class. So that's what would be weird about doing that there. Here's an idea. Let's just ignore Dark Phoenix, because we did it already. And yeah, it'd be cool to see that done better, but maybe well down the line? Like, it just wasn't the time. Like, Apocalypse made it worse because it made Jean Phoenix at the end of that movie, and that was dumb, and came out of nowhere, and it was like, the only thing we know about Jean Grey, or that matters about Jean Grey, the only thing we know that matters is that she's Phoenix, and we have to give her that already, and we're going to make it clear that it has nothing to do with space. And then in Dark Phoenix, we're going to kind of have it having to do with space, but it's also going to sort of be the same thing that it was in X3 too. We're just going to remake X3. It's ridiculous. If you were going to do Dark Phoenix for their fourth movie, at the very least, give Jean more screen time in that first movie, make me care about her before the Phoenix thing happens, and finally just send the X-Men to space and make it a space epic. I realize they go to space in that movie. Do it in an interesting way, and go full tilt, like Kinberg claimed that they were doing, and I realized that third act was changed completely, so maybe originally it was more like what he said it was. I'm not saying he was lying necessarily, but that's not what we ended up getting. But no, I don't see any eventuality where it would have made a lot of sense as the second movie.
Well, he does leave another super chat to clarify. He says he meant First Class, Days of Future Past, and then Dark Phoenix. So I guess he meant the third movie.
He meant second after Days of Future Past. Well, this is all very confusing as far as the whole where do trilogies start thing here, so I totally understand that. No, I don't like that either, because it's still kind of too big in scope. What I would think you'd want is a traditional X-Men villain instead of a big disaster thing. Like, one of the things that was a hard sell for Apocalypse, I think, was doing a big global disaster movie right after you did post-apocalyptic or dystopian. It's just too big. Like, I would think that you would want to bookend your big, epic, giant scoping movie with a smaller, more intimate character piece, or a more very traditional kind of X-Men movie. Like, now it's really the X-Men. They should have been established already at the beginning of that movie instead of that. Again, this is getting into stuff I'm going to talk about in that review, but instead of instead of that ridiculous, contrived Xavier arc where he is too naive in thinking that the humans and mutants are getting along well enough that he doesn't even need the X-Men. That's dumb after Trask. He should have just already had the X-Men established and just hoped he didn't have to use them, very often. And then you could just do what the beginning of Dark Phoenix did, which I kind of liked, which is we have an established X-Men team. They go off, they go do fun missions. The president has a phone on his desk where he can call them. Like, all of that is great. And why couldn't we have had that in Apocalypse? And then that's where you do Sinister. I think that third movie should have been Sinister. I've always said that.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous that we did Dark Phoenix before we even, we need to live with that team for a little bit. We just met Scott and Jean, and then we were already doing.
We needed to live with that team before Apocalypse, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's so weird. All right, let's jump back to some of the super chats.
Mutale also says, and why do the big epic film in the past? Well, the question is when we would ever catch up to the present. Because by movie 4, it's still period pieces, and they'd made a 5th one. It might have been in the early 2000s. I don't know. I think it would have been really funny if their next movie, if Dark Phoenix 2 had been set in 2003 when X2 was made. Because we had 1992, because that's when the cartoon show was, even though that movie had not enough to do with the cartoon show to do that. And I don't mean when it was set, I mean when it was made. 92 was when that show starts. And then they make another one in 2003, because they keep oscillating between 2s and 3s, where it's the first movie is 62, and then it's 73, and then it's 83, and then it's 92. So the next movie could be 03, because that's when X2 happens. I think that'd be really great. Or funny. I mean, not great, because it was unsalvageable at that point. You're done. Go home, son! You're done!
And you find out X2 was just the movie based on what actually happened in the X-Men universe, like the Ultimate Spider-Man story.
I should have I should have called this an X-Men movie theme night, because we've been mostly just talking about the movies, which I really appreciate, because this is a thing I know something about.
That's true.
And I've read some X-Men comics, of course, but I'm not a big X-Men aficionado. So I really appreciate this is the direction that the questions have gone, because I'm very comfortable in this space.
All right, here we go. Thomas Ledbetter.
Hey, man.
If you could sit down for lunch with one person, would you rather talk to Xavier, MCU's Cap, or Fred Rogers?
Oh man, you can't put anybody above Fred Rogers for me. It's not possible. Almost anybody in history, I don't think you could put for me above Fred Rogers. I want to sit down and have lunch with Fred Rogers, and then I want to be invited to live with him in his home. I adore Fred Rogers.
Well, he says the second part is, what would you discuss with them and why? So before you get too far into that, I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have anything else. The obvious thing with Fred Rogers, of course, is, I mean, how do you not discuss child rearing when you're a father? How do you not use Fred Rogers basically as a therapist, and talk specifically about your own, life and issues as a parent. Here are these specific things that happen with my children. What is your advice? I wish he was around, in exactly the same way as I wish Roger Ebert was still around as a movie critic. I wish we still had Fred Rogers to talk about modern parenting right now. But I also have always been interested and kind of curious in the way he was put off by superheroes. That's a whole thing with Fred Rogers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he did, because he was always not that he was anti the idea of superheroes in the first place. He did a whole theme week on superheroes, on his show on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And the reason he did it was because he was really concerned about stories of children who didn't understand that superheroes weren't real and thought they could put on capes and fly. And he was freaked out by that. And he was worried that kids, just in general too, watching too much TV and movies and things, weren't using their own imaginations enough and were having a difficult time discerning fiction from reality. And I would be I would have been fascinated just to see what Rogers would think of what I do for a living. honestly, just in a completely selfish, in a totally selfish way. Just like knowing that he had those reservations, I'd love to know what he thinks about what I do, and if you watched like one of my YouTube videos, what do you think about what I'm doing? And yeah, so
he'd be like, I was right. You've lost your sense of reality.
You're steering the children wrong, Captain Logan. And I'd be like, well, they're not kids anymore. And he'd go, well, that's probably the problem.
All right, I'm going to jump all the way back to the beginning.
Madman, that's true. And that was in that theme week. He went to the Incredible Hulk set during that show, which was pretty cool, yeah.
Well, that's interesting, because that's not really traditional superhero, that show. That's very
what else was on right then?
That's all we had. But John Ty was the first super chat. I still have it. It just wasn't X-Men related. So he wants to know, is the dual identity of Peter Parker / Spider-Man more interesting than the dual identity of Clark Kent and Superman?
Ooh, no, they're both interesting for totally different reasons, I think. But they're also interestingly comparable, right? Because neither of those are situations where you have. Let me get my thoughts together. Where you have a character that totally puts the other persona away at any point, right? It's not the Batman thing where he's one thing all the time, but he just uses the other one to so that nobody knows about his that he's Batman. He uses the other persona to keep that like the world at bay, knowing who he is. With some superheroes, you have almost like a multiple personality disorder or something, where they're very much one thing out of costume and one thing in costume. I think Peter Parker very often is more confident in his suit, but Spider-Man's not a whole other identity. He is fueled by Peter Parker's morality and his sense of responsibility, certainly. And like Clark Kent possesses all the values that Superman does. He just has to kind of pretend to be more bumbling than he is, so that he can get away with being Superman. But then there's always that question of, the more he acts that way, how much does it become like kind of two separate entities? So I guess Superman has that more than Spider-Man does, but still, both of those guys are very much the same person with just different aspects of the same personality. I don't think one is necessarily more interesting than the other. Oh, your mic is off. I also think that the other thing that's comparable between those two is that they're both. Let me decide if I'm right about this. The superhero side is an extension of the human side, which I guess I sort of said already. But it's like Clark Kent is the man, and Superman is kind of the persona he puts on in most versions of that character, and that is true of Spider-Man also.
Cool. And then the only other super chat I have left is from Alex Rolfe, and he just says, "Love you guys."
Oh, thanks, man. That is not a name I recognize right away. Thanks for being here. And if you've been a lurker, thanks for finally commenting. It's really nice. And thanks for the super chat, of course. But it's always nice when folks come out of the woodwork, and it's like, I've been here too. Thanks for thanks for saying hello.
Appreciate those donations. You give us $5 super chat, so thanks, man. But other than that, I'm going to go back to the pre-written questions from the chat.
Let's do it. So we are an hour into the show. Let's do a few pre-written, and I'm going to say if we don't see any more super chats in the next like 10 minutes or so, we'll go ahead and call it a night. But if some more super chats pop up after that, we will continue moving right along. Go ahead.
Mutale's first question of the night was, which has a more convoluted timeline, X-Men or the DCEU?
Timeline, I'm gonna say X-Men. Events, I don't know. Like character motivations and stuff, probably DCEU. Like, I can't reconcile everything together in that world. And I think, well, tonally, I think it's DCEU. So I would say, like, event-wise, it's X-Men. But those movies are a different universe every time there's a new one. Up to a certain point, anyway. Like, if you go back and look at BVS right after watching Man of Steel, they don't look like the same universe, and it's a direct sequel. It's weird. I mean, they look like obviously you can see Snyder's directing in both of them, but it's really clear that he's got different directors of photography. Like it feels like one of them is trying to be a great deal more stylistic than the other one is. The other one wants to be a little bit more grounded, even though it's got a stylized but muted color palette. It still feels a lot more influenced by the Nolan movies, and BVS seems like it wants to be a really heightened, not at all realistic comic book, like on the level of Watchmen, and it's shot like Watchmen because it's the same director of photography, and then but it also takes itself too seriously and is a lot more self-serious than Man of Steel was. So it's weird. I mean, that's a lot of why that movie falls apart so hard, is that it cannot, those two things do not go together.
Summographic, does Superman in general need Jimmy Olsen? And if so, why?
I think Superman generically needs human ties to the world that aren't all romantic. Is my answer to that question. It doesn't have to be Jimmy Olsen. I like the idea of Superman mentoring a teenager in some way, or of Clark Kent mentoring a young adult or a teenager. And so it's cool to have somebody like that around. It doesn't have to be specifically Jimmy Olsen. And that's a character that I think is pretty malleable and can be done in a lot of different ways. And, I mean, he's kind of an archetype before he's anything, right? I mean, like, he's a wet behind the ears kid who is really enthusiastic about getting the story or getting the photo, and he wants to be just like Superman, and he believes in all the right things, but he's naive and hasn't got himself totally figured out yet. I mean, I just described most good kids in the world of a stalwart superhero who does the right thing. Like, it can be kind of anybody.
Could be Jenny Olsen.
Sure. Could be Jenny Olsen. Or just Jenny with no last name. And then have Jimmy Olsen, but murder him in the first 5 minutes as a CIA or an FBI agent or whatever it was he was.
Could be his twin brother in the last episode of the 10th season.
You know, it could. Yeah, absolutely.
We could do this all day. John Ty gives us a $5 super chat, though, so I'll interrupt us. Would you have the willpower to resuscitate someone to save them, at the same time needing to use the restroom really badly?
That's hilarious. Well, yes, one of these things would be a great deal more important than the other. I mean, if you simply, if your body simply could not handle the fact that you needed to go to the bathroom that badly, I guess you would end up in a really embarrassing place while you were trying to save a person. But
it's worth it if you're saving the person. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so I guess he was asking, would you be willing to do that, to embarrass yourself like that if you were saving for someone? Yes.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope I would be.
I would hope most of us would. Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Like Cap always says, you never know until you're in that situation, but I hope I'm never in that situation. It's a weird situation. Oh, man. Daniel Davis, what would be your ideal on-screen X-Men team? I think Cyclops should still be there. This is him. I think Cyclops should still be there, and given better screen time and character, and also Beast should be the heavy.
The heavy? You just mean like the big strong character on the team?
Yeah.
I'm used to heavy being a way to describe the bad guy in a thing. So I would that's kind of an old Hollywood team, the heavy. My first X-Men was the 90s show, and I still think of that overall as my team. I didn't grow up with Kitty Pryde, so I don't have a huge dog in the Kitty Pryde fight. Like, you know, whether she should be a mainstay, be on a team. I've liked her in things, but she's not a big character for me. So for me, it's the 90s team plus Nightcrawler. That's kind of the definitive thing. And of course, Beast is on that team, so you would have that. But, you know, I want my... Actually, I'm going to say it this way. It's the 90s team, so it's Cyclops, Wolverine, Jean, Storm... it's Storm, Scott, and Jean, right? And then it's Gambit, it's Rogue, it's not Jubilee, but it is Nightcrawler. So get rid of Jubilee from that team and have Nightcrawler, and that's my definitive X-Men team.
Yeah, the team I liked was the Ultimate Team, which was kind of a mix of the original and the 90s, because it was Cyclops, Beast, and Jean Grey, but then it had Colossus
Yeah.
and Storm were the other two to round out the five. And then they got Iceman was like the first one that they collected. So it was like those six. So yeah, I kind of like that team.
Yeah, and Iceman's big in the Ultimate Universe. He shows up a lot.
Yeah, he was there. I think the first issue, if not the second issue, I think it might be the first issue, is them going to get him because
Okay.
they find him on Cerebro and they go. He's like the first one that they get on the team. They add to the team.
When they do the full-on relaunch with Ultimate, not a reboot, but when they do the full-on relaunch and they renumber everything again, and we've got Miles Morales, I'm pretty sure that Iceman is around a lot in those books, but it's been a while to remember. I read some of the X-Men in that period and liked it a lot. But I never read the early Ultimate stuff past the first couple issues because I thought it was dreadful, and I just never went back to it.
That always stuck with me as a kid because there's like this scene where Iceman's like,
Dave Atkins, Marco! Sorry, go ahead.
there's this scene when they're saving him, and then Iceman, this building's about to fall on all this crowd of people, and then he saves all of them, even though they're all like shouting at him and everything. And then after he saves them, this woman just like throws a beer bottle at his head and it like breaks open on his head. And it was because that book is so dark.
Yeah.
And it always stuck with me. Like it like broke his ice head, and I was like, jeez.
I may, like when he gets his head stepped on and shattered in Days of Future Past. I may have to finally go back and revisit those and see if any of that is worth it. Let me switch gears just real fast, because some people have been trying to ask some video game things tonight, and I've been ignoring them. Senior nerd, or just haven't gotten there. I wasn't ignoring them, because we were talking about X-Men a lot. Have you heard of the supposed Nintendo Switch Pro that is coming this year, and are you planning on paying for it if it exists? There have been rumors for a Nintendo Switch Pro going back several years, and it seems like the last several months there's been more reason to think that something like that might be coming. I haven't been paying a lot of attention to it, so I don't know what the specs are supposed to be on that alleged system, and why it would be so much better to have than what I've got right now. As I've mentioned before, my big New Year's resolution is I'm not spending money on myself this year, so I would not be buying it this year. Unless it was for like a big Christmas present for the kids or something. But I don't have any plans on getting another Nintendo Switch right now. I've got two. I've got the Switch Lite, which we got Freddie for his birthday, and I have a regular Switch, and I'm very happy with them. And so I don't know what they could include that would make me change over and get another one right now. I rarely do this during the Captain Logan show, but DJ, I'm going to need like 2 minutes if you could hold the fort for a minute. So if anybody's got questions for DJ specifically, or anything, DJ, that you see that I'm not going to mind not talking about, would you mind just talking to the audience for just a couple of minutes without me? I'll be right back, everybody.
Sure thing, man. I'll hold the fort. All right, guys, he's gone. Party time. What do you want to talk about that freaking guy will never let us talk about? I'm kidding. I love the man. He's my boss. He's my friend. And I love doing this show with you guys. But I'm going to need some content. Someone earlier asked me randomly what my favorite Office episode was. And that is a very hard question. I don't even know. Because the first two seasons of that show are like the best part of the show. But they're so... I don't know. There's a story that goes through those two seasons more so than the later seasons where there's kind of like one-off episodes that I can remember. Oh, here we go. DJ, have you heard of One Punch Man? I have heard of it. I have not seen it. I'm not a huge anime guy, but I heard it. He's like the bald guy who's always like working out all the time. Jer Bear, when are you planning to watch the Lord of the Rings set? Yes, I was hoping this would come up tonight. My wife got me the 4K Lord of the Rings set for a birthday present, and it's awesome and it's beautiful, and I haven't seen these in a long time, and I've been having a craving to rewatch them, and so I wanted to get the 4K ones, so hopefully I will watch those soon. They take a lot of time, so I'm gonna have to make time for that. DJ, have you watched any anime with Johnny Young Bosch? I have not. I know that he does anime. I know he's probably more famous for that these days than being a Power Ranger. But I have not seen any with him in it. I haven't seen much anime at all, other than the Studio Ghibli movies, but those aren't like series. Billion dollar question, DJ. Is DJ an actual DJ? No, that's what everyone asked me. That's like the million dollar question that everyone asked me. No, I know nothing about music in general, really. I couldn't help you if you needed a DJ for your wedding. Which movies do you respect more than like? From Spedavescu. The Dark Knight. I've talked about that before. I don't like The Dark Knight, but it's a good movie. It's a well-made movie. It's just not for me. I don't know if you can even hear that because I'm whispering so everyone doesn't cancel me. It is a pretty set, Dimwit Monkey. I'm going to show it to Cap because apparently Cap watched the first one recently, even though he does not like these movies. He said he watched it with his family this weekend, so I'm excited to talk to him about that. Daniel Davis, what's the worst regarded movie that you like or maybe even love? Good grief, these hard questions to think of on the spot. I really like, I say this, I haven't watched it in a long time, but I really enjoyed the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland when it came out, and everyone seems to hate that movie. I don't know. I kind of liked it. I thought it was cool, but I haven't watched it in a long time. Maybe I should watch it again, or maybe I shouldn't. The Psycho Reviewer, what is your least favorite form of cancer? Well, I'm not a big fan of lymphoma because that's the kind I had. So yeah, don't like that one from personal experience. It's not fun. Although the cancer wasn't that bad. I barely even noticed I had it, but the chemo to fix the cancer was very bad. Didn't like that at all. Don't recommend it.
I have returned. Hello.
Man, the questions were flying in. I couldn't even keep up with all the DJ questions. Like, look at
wow.
I'm way behind.
Well, why don't you just keep going for a minute then? I'll just sit here and enjoy listening to you while I wait for my plumbing to stop.
Okay. Oh, man. What would the Ultimate Universe welder be like? Well, he'd be even darker. The welder already has a pretty dark backstory. If you reference Austin's many comments and his entire backstory that he's built about the welder. But
again, he would just be that guy from El Camino, okay? He would just be the welder from El Camino.
He would just be bashing people with crowbars. Oh, man. Man, yeah. Stussy says he loves Sucker Punch. One of the questions that I got asked while you were gone was a movie that everyone hates that I like or even love.
I hear that from people sometimes about Sucker Punch. Some people just love Snyder's style so much. Like I personally don't understand that with that movie. I think that thing makes no sense, and I do not understand the appeal of that. But I don't mind what it looks like, certainly. Dimwit Monkey says, "Oh hey Cap, just talking about cancer."
Yeah, someone asked me my least favorite type of cancer. It was great.
Mutali says you should ask me for a raise.
Oh, should I? Because of the performance that I just gave for the last 5 minutes? Because
well,
I don't think it was.
Don't ask for it yet. I gotta go back and review the tape.
Someone brought up Lord of the Rings because
I wasn't watching it while I was off camera for.
I think it was Ben. Is Ben Jer Bear?
I don't know.
Okay.
Is that Ben? Yes. You mean Ben from Discord, Ben?
Maybe not. Well, anyway, Jer Bear from the Discord. I don't think it is Ben. I think it's someone else. But he asked me about the set.
Okay, I'm not sure who that is. Oh, yeah.
My wife just got me the 4K set for my birthday. So I'm going to watch these soon because I haven't seen them in a while. And I heard that you watched the first one this weekend. Is that true?
I watched both, the first two, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Look at that. Coming around.
No, well, I mean, I've seen them before.
I know.
I watched those movies in the theater when they came out when you were just a little kid.
A little tyke?
Yeah.
I saw those in the theater. Probably too early.
No, I have always appreciated those okay, but I find them a little slow. And the second movie, I always fall asleep in the same place. I did it again this time too. That stuff with, like, I can't remember if it's flashbacks with Liv Tyler or what, but there's a whole section with Liv Tyler, I think, and Aragorn where I always fall asleep. I don't know.
Interesting. Did you watch the extended versions?
No, I don't have those.
Oh, okay.
I have seen those before, and I really don't feel the need to watch those again. But
yeah, that's the only way I can watch them. But I understand.
But yeah, I couldn't join you
especially
guys.
Two Towers, because they just cut out the entire thing with Saruman.
So the Discord did, quick plug for this, we do watch parties most Saturdays, and when I'm not there, those guys will often pick crazy, insane B movies and horrible horror things and stuff, and they'll do 10, 11-hour watch parties. They'll stay up all night and watch stuff, and I will sometimes pop in and watch the first thing or two, or I'll pick a thing and we'll all stay up late and watch it. We did an AVGN one a few weeks ago that was really fun. We did it with Batman the Animated Series. We all picked episodes, but I couldn't make it on Saturday because I was working on the Rewind, and I didn't want to watch all the extended versions, honestly. But I kind of wanted to watch those again because it's been a long time. I know my wife likes them a lot, and Jason hasn't seen more than the first one. So, and I've also been always curious about how that at least first Hobbit movie turned out. I've never bothered with it, and they did those a couple weeks ago on the Discord too. They watched through all three of those, and I think you were there for that too.
I just watched the first one and I went to sleep. I don't care about the second two, but I wanted to do the Lord of the Rings with them, but my set just got here today, and they did it this weekend, and I didn't. I mean, I don't know. I could have done it with I still have the extended editions, but that's my 4K set, and I wanted to watch it that way, because Peter Jackson actually went back and worked on those 4K restorations himself, so it's pretty cool. Apparently, they're really well done.
Eric Brown says, catching up on this, and G's Cap and DJ really dislike fun things. What do you mean? Catching up on what? Just watch these small Captain Logan shows, or what?
I don't know. Maybe he's talking about the Spider-Man 3 news, or because we're so down on that. I don't know what it means.
Yeah. Apparently, we dislike fun things.
Yeah. As a rule, I just avoid fun things. Me and Cap both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're kind of pretentious is the thing.
Anyway, a lot of super chats came in that I got to get to. John Ty.
Oh, okay.
Would you have?
Thanks, guys. What's up?
Should there still be an argument over what a real fan and a fake fan are?
I don't know that there should be an argument necessarily. I mean, I think people get pretentious about that. I think at the end of the day, like what you like, who cares? We've done whole shows on this. The idea that I think it's wrong to pretend you're something that you're not, and that's kind of the end of this conversation for me. So, if you proclaim to be a fan of a part of a thing that you clearly know nothing about, I'm not interested in the fake fan thing. I just think that you're being not authentic. That's it. But I mean, I could say that about anything that you're that way with. So if somebody says, this is the thing Eric and I have talked about, and I think he gets more on about this than I do. But when people act like they're huge aficionados about something that they like casually, that can be annoying, but I also can sympathize with that because everything is relative. So I remember when I was younger, I used to think that I was a much bigger Star Trek fan than I was. Now, what exactly does that mean, though? If that was the thing that I was the biggest fan of, and there was nothing else that trumped it, and there was nothing else that I knew as well as I did in Star Trek, then in my own little world, in my own bubble, I was a big Star Trek fan. But if you compared me to people that knew it much better than I did, before I was speaking episode title, before I had seen every episode, but I thought of myself this way before I had even seen Best of Both Worlds even, you'd go, you're a fake fan. Now, if I know the difference, and if I'm pretending like I know a thing better than I do because I realize there's a lot more of it that I could be looking at, or there are a bunch of people that I have talked to that know this better than I do, but I'm calling myself an expert, or pretending like I'm an aficionado, then yeah, I'm being authentic, sure. I guess at that point you're a fake fan. But if you just don't know a thing as well as you think you do, that can be understandable, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, in the age of the internet, I don't even know if I would be comfortable calling myself a fan of anything.
Yeah, there's always, the thing is, this has always been true, there's always somebody that's better than you at everything, right? Like, you're always going to find that person that knows a thing more than you do, that's better at a thing than you are, and on the internet, now, there's avenues, there's so much more platform that people can go to and make themselves known and heard, that you can find those people at this point. And when I was a kid, and adults would tell you that, you'd go, well, yeah, I mean, like, in the broad scope, ethereally, yes, there's probably someone out there that is a better writer than me, or is better at Sonic the Hedgehog than I am, but I'm never going to meet that person. You know, and then, well, I guess a writer, because you can just read a book. I can just pick up books, I'll find somebody that's better at that than I am. But I'm just taking just a thing that I like to do. When I was a kid, I'd get kind of arrogant about that. I'd be like, you know, who knows? I mean, there probably is, but I'm never going to meet that person. You are now. You're going to meet them all the time online.
Yeah, and the word fan has been like diluted.
Like
I
everything.
use it
Like
just to
everything
say
else.
I like something.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that means I like it now. So it's like, or I'm not a fan, that means I don't like it. So I don't know. It's a really hard.
It's weird. It's been diluted, but it's also been, I mean, I don't want to say weaponized like so many terms, but maybe to a degree. But like, you're right. On the one hand, for years, we've I mean, my whole lifetime, that to be fair, that word has been taken to mean I like a thing. And at the same time, you've had a lot of like mega fans of things that have kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to stay away from buzzwords, but they're coming to my head. Gatekeeping and all of that. You'll have people that are like that kind of protect that word and go, you're not allowed to call yourself a fan of this unless you've taken this test and you know everything there is to know about this thing. And who gets to make those rules? I don't know. I think it's just a matter of being authentic. I think if you are politely corrected and you realize that you don't know a thing as well as you know it, then it's probably your responsibility to say, "Oh, okay, I'm not as into that as I thought I was compared to these other people." I guess, or maybe that doesn't matter to you. You know what I mean? But I don't. But I'm not interested in the argument of fan versus fake fan. I think that that word is far too ambiguous.
Yeah. Next super chat is from Michael Tiexier. Tiexier.
Yeah, I don't recognize that name. Welcome.
Do you see Dick Grayson more as a younger brother to Bruce Wayne or as a son?
Hey, that's a really cool question. Maybe it depends on the continuity, but in my own head, like the classic Dick Grayson, I think of him certainly more as a son. Yeah, I think that he's written more like a younger brother when you get into Morrison, maybe. But before that, it's I get very much the sense of you know, he has like it's a mentor situation, but it's more like a father kind of situation. Yeah. I could go on about that, but we should move on since we got a lot more stuff. We are an hour 35 in. How many more super chats do we have at this point?
2, 4, 6, 7.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and move on. Go ahead. Thanks for the super chat.
Yeah, Speda Askew. How would MCU be different if of their first two movies, The Incredible Hulk was the big success and Iron Man just a mild one? Wow.
Wow. Interesting.
Crazy question. Well, I mean, Edward Norton probably wouldn't have left.
Yeah, that's the first thing.
How much still would have, because it was like creative differences. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if being more famous would have helped his situation at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if that had happened and they had recast and kept running with that because that movie was more popular than Iron Man, you probably wouldn't have had. Well, actually, I'm not right about that either, because that would have also not. I was gonna say you maybe wouldn't have changed the character as much as you did, where he was as he was recast, he was almost retconned into a different character to some degree. I was going to say maybe that wouldn't have happened either. That really depends on who ends up directing Avengers, though, because I don't think that would have changed what movies got made, because those were all pretty well decided after Incredible Hulk, if not Iron Man 2, you know, up through Avengers, regardless of how those things did, right? And also, just because Incredible Hulk was really popular wouldn't mean that the Universal rights would have changed. So they still wouldn't have been able to make a sequel to that movie, unless they were allowed to make sequels of other characters that were in that movie. Like, we're gonna do the Liv Tyler movie next, but I don't think they could have done that, even if they wanted to.
Ross, the movie.
Right, Betty Ross, the Betty Ross She-Hulk or whatever. I don't think they could have done that.
I don't know how much would have, because those movies are really different, but the tone of those movies is kind of similar. So I don't know.
I think the tone's pretty different for Incredible Hulk. It's a little bit more somber, but part of that's just because of the character, that you're dealing with. Yeah, but it felt I don't know if I want to say more grounded, but I mean, it's paced very differently. It certainly feels like a thing that could be set in the same universe,
but it's also an on-the-run movie, so it's like it almost based on that story.
Yeah, but it almost looks more like right. But if we told that same on-the-run movie now, it would not have been. It would probably not be as somber as that was post Age of Ultron.
Yeah, that's what I like about that. so much because it's like that TV show. That TV show is depressing.
Well, and Winter Soldier went back to a somewhat similar tone with obviously a very different kind of story and different stuff. But I mean, like, I see the Incredible Hulk and Winter Soldier is more akin than Winter Soldier and anything else in that universe, probably. Like, both of those feel like they could have been in Netflix shows or something to some degree. So, yeah, I don't know how much that would have affected the tone of the whole thing moving forward. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. That would be something to noodle for a while.
I'm surprised I'm saying this because at first, like, you saw me stutter a little bit. I almost started saying things that I immediately didn't agree with myself. Oh, it'd be so different. And then immediately I went, I'm leaning toward nothing would have changed at all, at least in that first phase.
I wonder if they would have been more, because we don't talk about it like this, but because it's not really nostalgia, but that movie was such a love letter to that show. I wonder if we don't, like, bring in older references to other Marvel stuff more early on.
Perhaps
like,
so.
Not like the crazy multiverse stuff we're doing now, but if we're doing more like if we just bring up older, but there wasn't that much. I mean, Hulk was kind of the big one, so I don't know.
Isn't it interesting that we cannot get away from the multiverse talk right now to the point where it feels like it's happened already, but we haven't actually had one movie with it yet? Like, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
it's all we've been able to talk about lately. Where I keep stopping myself from saying, like, look how this has taken over. It hasn't even happened yet.
Not on either side. It hasn't happened.
But
yet.
It feels like it has.
That's the problem. Is by the time we finally get to it, it's gonna feel old already. It's weird.
I don't know how much of a novelty there's going to really be for a lot of people with that, especially anybody really paying attention. But your general audiences, I'm sure there will be. But for those of us that have been dealing with it for so long, and especially again after the CW really botched their version of that, they got to it first. It's really unfortunate that they got to do that first.
They can always claim that they did it first. Oh man, here we go. There's still super chats are still coming in. TH1 pitch the Office episode of WandaVision. You rock, DJ.
Well, I've never seen more than an episode of that show, so you're gonna have to do that. So I mean, I know what the format of that is like, but
yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because I'm 3 episodes in, and not to spoil anything, but the 3rd episode was so plot heavy that it was still a very 70s episode, but it wasn't as much as the first 2, right? Like I feel like the first 2 were more like it felt like a 50s episode. It felt like a 60s episode of television. The 70s episode, it felt like it, but it wasn't. You didn't get like a 70s plot like you did for the first 2, right?
No, you did. You absolutely did. The way they handled the I don't want to spoil too much either, but the way they handled
I know what you're talking about. The big thing.
The big thing in that. Yeah, that was the cool thing about that.
I haven't watched
it. And I think that episode, and I think that show is ramping up, and I'm liking it more every episode. Like, I love the way the 70s stuff was handled. I think it's already its best episode. I like that I could not peg a particular show with that. Like the second episode is pretty much just straight up what's that show? The Bewitched. It's just Bewitched, right? And there's a couple other things here and there a little bit, but like that first show was more of a blend of things, but then the second one was just Bewitched. That 70s show, but not that 70s show. The 70s episode, I couldn't peg it down plot-wise or visually or anything to one show. It was a bunch of different shows, and something I did not expect at all was Partridge Family. There was surprisingly a bunch of Partridge Family in that. It was crazy. Anyway, how did we get here? What are we talking about?
The only thing I was gonna
pitch
say
an office thing, yeah. That will be the episode that features the boss the most. Because we've only seen that character like once or twice so far, and that'll be the feature the episode where we see him a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because you don't really need it to be Office heavy. You just need to go with that interview format, because there was a lot of shows that did that after The Office, Parks and Rec and Modern Family. Yeah, so you just gotta. I don't know how to pitch an episode, but I think Kat did a good job.
I can't either. But
5590RS, would the X-Men be better suited for a TV show? Yes, 100%.
Naturally. That is true of pretty much everybody at Marvel, though. And you could say that about comics in general, just because we're so used to those characters being in serialized, narratives that are ongoing and that are kind of soap operas. Marvel more so than DC generally, because you don't have as many traditionally, and I talk about this all the time, but traditionally you don't have as many stories that are like a big one-shot event kind of thing, or not even an event, but just, you know, an adventure that stands alone, that's about a character that is larger than life and a kind of a godlike, iconic sort of character. So it's a lot easier to tell a Batman story or a Superman story than it is a Spider-Man story, at least where you haven't been able to establish it for very long. I would have loved the miniseries on Disney Plus that set up Spider-Man and then let him have movies. You see what I'm saying? But I mean, I think that's true of nearly everybody, except for maybe Ant-Man or something in Marvel.
Yeah. Spedivasq, $10 super chat.
Wow,
you and
thank
your
you.
families are trapped inside of a sitcom world. What type of sitcom do you want to be? Do you want it to be? Also, what other TV genres would make good WandaVision style era by era breakdowns? Oh, jeez.
It'd be fun to do it with action shows, where you have a season that's the A-Team and then a season that's 24.
Yeah, that's another big one that changes so much.
Changes decade to decade. That'd be really cool. And even primetime dramas you could do it with, but that would be a little bit more open-ended and harder to pin down, probably. As far as what era or a kind of sitcom I would personally want to be trapped in, if I was trapped in a sitcom, I don't know.
I don't know. I guess 90s, because they don't do anything. They're never working. They have these really nice apartments, and they're never at work. They're just sitting at the coffee shop all the time.
Yeah, I think the definitive answer is Frasier, actually.
Interesting question though. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
that's great.
Logan Dodd, do you find it as funny as I do that STD Season 3's mystery plot is called The Burn?
Now that I know that, yeah, that's kind of funny. And maybe that's even in the first episode that I've just forgotten. I watched the first episode. I've not watched the rest of it. I think it's finished now. I don't care.
I don't know what that is. What is STD?
Discovery. I want to be done with that entirely. And the first 2 seasons, I don't know, just because I'm such a Star Trek fan, and just because people kept talking to me about it and asking me about it, I felt the need to keep up with it. I haven't gotten hardly any questions this year about it, and that's great, because I really detest new Trek. Picard was the last straw, and I really don't want to have to watch any more of that. And as I said before, I'm not saying I won't. I mean, there's still like a modicum of curiosity, just because people will talk about it and how insane it is, probably, and I feel out of the conversation, and I kind of hate being out of the conversation, but it's not worth having to, sit through it and suffer through it, because it is torture, that show, for me. And so I don't know. I may finally sit down and binge it, and if there's a day where I really just hate myself for some reason, that I'm kidding. So yeah, I either didn't remember that or I didn't know that, but that's funny.
Ryder, $2 super chat. Do you like Warcraft, the 2016 movie?
I didn't see it, and I love that director, but I was somewhat curious about that. But as you guys know, it's not my genre, and I don't know anything about that video game. And then I heard that it was kind of confusing and badly organized, and like the structure of it was weird, and it was hard to follow if you weren't familiar with that world already. And I was like, I just don't care enough, and so I didn't bother with it. But I love that director, and I hate that and I was afraid that would happen, because he hasn't gotten a lot of work since then, and he made a sequel to Moon that everybody said was terrible, and I haven't bothered with that either. So I think I'm done with him until somebody says he made something really good, which sucks, but yeah.
Yeah. Eric Brown, I don't know if this is a joke or not. You two are the definition of pretentious, fun-hating fake fans. Here's $5.
Yeah, thanks, man. I don't know if it's a joke either. He's got several super chats coming up like that.
Oh, okay.
And there's one where he just says, I can't stand you guys anymore. I'm going to leave. Here's $5. So thanks for the super chats.
That first one sounds like a joke based on what we talked about earlier about the fake fans thing. But if there's more, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think it is a 50-50 call right now as to whether or not that guy really thinks we're terrible and we suck, and he felt the need to throw money at us so that we would read his comments on the air, or if he's making fun of people like that. I can't tell. Regardless, thanks, man. We appreciate it. I don't mind being trolled so much in the context of a super chat. So
I will read any horrible thing you want to say about me if you pay me for it. Anything you want. As long as it's
Don't give folks that green light.
No, it has to be okay for the channel. Yeah, so I guess I'll read a second one. Seriously, how dare you have a subjective opinion and bias? What are you, human? Okay, so he's definitely joking. Here's $5.
It sounds like it, yeah.
And then he says, "The brave little toaster changed my life. Here's $5."
Yeah.
I love that. Can everyone just start saying that at the end of their super chat? It's like their call sign. Here's $5.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's extra words. So if they had a substantial question, it could up the ante for how much the super chat costs.
Yeah, it's amazing that he's able to fit that in all of
every
his questions
time
and keep them
Here's
$5.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Brave Little Toaster is a movie that also changed my life, maybe for the worst. That movie I had nightmares about when I was a kid. I have still not done a commentary on that, but I'd like to. And I don't know who would actually watch that, but
I don't know if I've seen the first one, but I've seen one of those trilogy of movies.
Okay.
I rented it as a kid. I don't know if it was the first.
We'll do a Streaming Wars or a mystery commentary or something one of these days. And I want it to be the first time you and I have watched it in years. I don't think we should prepare for that at all. I would much rather do a blind watch on that.
I don't know if I've seen the first one. I know I've seen one of them because I know all the characters.
But it would be interesting if it was your very first time to do a blind watch, because that movie is insane.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hold up, but it's fascinating. It has a really bad third act, and I went back to it like 10 years ago, and
yeah,
I was like, oh wow, this movie was one of my favorite movies growing up. It was really important to me, and it's a really bad musical. Like, if nothing else, it's a bad musical. It has really crappy songs. But it's horrifying. Like,
Orlock Blackwater says, "I want Cap to play the brave little toaster in a live-action movie."
I just love the idea of a live-action Brave Little Toaster. That's hilarious.
So I got a serious question.
How do you do that without it being just a stop-motion toaster? Like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm like putting together kind of like a definitive children's movie list on Letterboxd for my kids to grow up with, because I want to kind of do that and kind of be prepared, because he's already 2, and I'm kind of trying to get that together. Do you think that should be something that a kid sees these days, or is it not worth it?
No, I would not put that on that list at this point. I was traumatized by that movie.
So for 2 reasons, it's not good and it traumatized.
And I don't think I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it was the kind of thing like American Tail is a legitimately good film. I mean, I think it's been a long time since I've seen that too. That traumatized kids too because it was really kind of scary, and it had rats that were the scariest character designs possible for an animated rat. But it was about things, and it had a good relationship story, and it's. If you think your kid can handle it, something like that is worth watching. Or even depressing Disney movies like Fox and the Hound and stuff like that. Like, I get why you'd show stuff like that to your kids. Fox and the Hound's not brilliant. This is the first thing that came to my mind that wasn't Bambi. But with something like Brave Little Toaster, it's just creepy, kind of for the sake of being creepy. There's not a lot of actual substance there. And I remember those characters being a lot more drawn than they actually are. It's sort of like Nightmare Before Christmas, although that's, of course, a way, way better movie, in that when I was a kid, I remembered it being more substantial and about more, and those characters being more defined. And then I grew up and watched it again, and I was like, oh, there's not as much here as I remembered there being. But that's really true of Brave Little Toaster. Folks in the comments are asking for that. We will do that commentary. That may be the first thing we do when we're finished with Marvel Mania then.
That's funny. Yeah, let's try it.
Yes, Don Bluth did love to scare kids, Senior Nerd. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I was just going on the next super chat. Is he the one who directed that movie or something?
No, he made American Tail.
Oh, I gotcha. Logan Dodd, assume Spider-Man goes to Sony. Would you like to see Tom Holland get the symbiote?
I would like to see Tom Holland not go to Sony. If Sony gets the rights back and MCU can't do Spider-Man, they need to do another full-on reboot. I do not like the idea of the confusion of that character, unless they do it through multiverse, I guess. Not that I really want that, but as long as it's not, ridiculously confusing, where Sony doesn't know if Sony's in the MCU, because they clearly don't know that right now, then I'm more okay with that, but overall I don't want that. I kind of want them to just full-on reboot. I kind of want them to not make more live-action things and just stick with the only thing they apparently can do okay, which is their one animated Spider-Man movie, which hopefully doesn't have a horrible sequel. I'm a little bit concerned about like a Lego Movie 2 situation. Not that that's a horrible movie, but it's not nearly as good as the first, and it kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
Where you get this brilliant movie, and then you go, oh man, we have this awesome franchise on our hands, and we need to stop assuming that just because we get one great movie that we have a series that will be wonderful. Because, I mean, it's easy to make that assumption based on TV. You get used to TV series, and if you have a brilliant pilot, you don't expect the whole first season to be bad. But you have to think of the movie series as each movie is a season, as opposed to the first episode.
Yeah. John Ty, why is it so hard to be balanced emotionally? Oh, Dr. Cap.
Well, was that John Ty? That had to be John Ty. I didn't hear who it was, but I'm sure it was John Ty. Well, John. I would say that it's because we live in a very hectic world. Where with lots of hustle and bustle and lots of potential drama in everybody's lives in the kind of world that we live in these days, of course. There is a lot of talk in the psychiatric community right now about how the world has become narcissistic and how everybody has the kinds of traumas that we used to think of as just things that people had in their childhood that they have to deal with when they grow up, like everybody's lives to some degree with social media and the way I'm gonna be really vague when the way I'm talking right now, I guess, but like just because I don't have time to get into it, just the way things are now, the way I don't know, the way you have to be to navigate the world. It's really hard for everyone not to feel like they have like constant, at least small degrees of trauma all the time. And it's I guess saying it like that is kind of depressing. I'm hesitating because I'm trying not to sound like horribly cynical and not hopeful and stuff, but stuff's so weird these days. And the internet and social media is affecting us in ways nobody could have anticipated. And it's hard to say if we're not kind of overall changing something about the nature of ourselves. It really feels like we're living in a cyberpunk future already. And I think that definitely has something to do with it. But also, in general, no matter what area you live in, life's not easy. I could make the argument life's not supposed to be easy. So there's also that,
Well, and we've talked about how we're taking in so much information these days, so much more than we were even ready to. And humans are made to sympathize and be empathetic towards other people's pain and suffering. And when you're hearing so much more of it, and the highs and lows, not just the lows, but like you're all over the place, like your emotions are going everywhere. So it's hard.
That's a really great point. I also think that there's kind of a war on critical thinking and a war on what I would think of as real education happening right now. And I think, especially in this country, a lot of what people have to put up with on a daily basis is counter to the way we as a species have evolved. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we do in this country that just does not go along with our human nature and what is most conducive to mental health, I think.
To quote Dwight from The Office, we need a new plague.
Oh, well, we already got one, but...
Kinda.
But kinda, yeah. All right, let's move on, shall we?
Last one from our good buddy Eric Brown. I love that his name is Eric, because he's messing with us. I subjectively can't stand you guys and your opinions any longer. I'm going to go rant about some TV shows I don't like on Twitter now. Here's $5. I love his catchphrase.
If he ever comes back, I really hope that he changes his YouTube handle to "Here's $5."
Yes, please do that.
I want to just read comments from. Yeah, I just want to read comments from "Here's $5." No, that's hilarious.
He has to keep his shtick. He can't ever give us a $10 super chat or anything.
It'd be great if every comment after that wasn't even a super chat.
That's true.
Just "Here's $5." That guy. Well, it's nice that he didn't say that he objectively can't stand this. So that's
because then we'd have to disagree with you, sir. And then we got one more from Josh Galisano that just came in. Oh, and there's another one. Would you rather see Teenage X-Men team or older?
Yeah, great question.
He means elderly X-Men or like older X-Men.
Can we get geriatric X-Men next time? That'd be great.
And he was able to get his question into a $3 super chat, which I don't see very often. I see $2.99 a lot.
It's really impressive.
That's interesting.
You know what he couldn't have said though? He couldn't have said, "Here's $3."
No, he couldn't, because I would have pushed it right up to $5.
Josh, great question, man. I'm back and forth on it. I mean, we've run the gamut on this. We've done both. We started with an adult X-Men team that centered on a teenager, but also Wolverine, and then we went back to the past and did a teenage group, 2 teenage groups. So I guess just for the sake of variety and because I don't want another origin movie, I complained really hard in the Apocalypse Rewind that we've had, out of all those movies, 4 origin films in the X-Men movies. 4. So wow. I think just because of that, I'd like to see 20 or 30 somethings, but also a mix of ages makes a lot of sense for X-Men. Your 90s team had a good mix of ages, and it'd be cool to get that again. So
yeah, as horrible as X3 is, what was kind of cool is you had like the teens, you had like your Kitty Prydes and your Iceman Rogue, their whole thing, and then you had Storm, and you had your different ages. I guess that's all the way back from the first X-Men. But
the way that's organized is really good. You're right, because you had X2 did a little bit more of that too, but like we actually put them all in costumes in 3, and so you had almost like a division of teams where you had like the teenage group, you had the kids table, the kids table. You remember Pyro's line about that? He's like, "I'm done with this kids table," and stuff, and then he runs off, and that's when he joins Magneto. But yeah.
Yeah, I think if we can say anything good about that movie. And then
honestly, I feel like I have way more nice things to say about X3 than Apocalypse at this point. Like, I don't like X3. It's got a lot of problems. It's pretty awful. But I struggled to say nice things about Apocalypse, like, at all, beyond some casting choices. Like, it was a struggle, and I don't think I succeeded. Like, get ready for an hour of complaining and ranting, because that's what that review is. That's what there was to do.
Isn't it crazy how that keeps happening? Like, when X-Men 3 came out, we thought it was the worst thing ever. Nothing could top it. Then Origins comes out. Now Apocalypse comes out. That happened in the MCU too. I remember when I really didn't like Iron Man 2, and it was like my bottom of my list. And then you get Thor 2 and Thor 3 and Ant-Man and the Wasp, and like things keep pushing Iron Man 2 up, so it's not the worst anymore.
We're topping ourselves in both directions.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I mean, some of the best superhero movies have been made in the last 5 years, but that is also true of a lot of the worst of them. So yeah, Apocalypse is a weird case though, because I didn't think it was worse than X3 until I started writing about it. Like, going to the theater, that was just and folks in the Discord, when I told them about the link, then I posted it on Patreon. And quick plug, you can listen to it right now if you're a patron, because I've already posted the audio there. Folks were like, I can't believe you had this much to say about this movie. And I was like, me too, because I thought it was kind of a throwaway, nothing, like I was just indifferent to it. And then I started writing about it. Like, oh no, this is making me angry the more I think about it. But I had to think about it, and now I'm like, no, this sucks, and I'm angry, and yeah. And like, I don't want to be hyperbolic when I say there's hardly anything nice to say about that movie. There really was. Like, you know, if you listen to my reviews at all, you know that I'm always looking for the silver linings and things that are not great. Like, if it was there, if I thought it was there, I'd have found it. But like, I wasn't looking to hate this movie. I thought I was indifferent. I thought this was gonna be a half-hour rewind. Nope.
Spedvescu, $5 super chat. You get an interview with Kevin Feige on the condition that you don't ask Marvel questions. What would you talk about with him?
I don't know a lot about him besides the fact that he's also a big Star Wars fan. So like, I just don't know what else I would talk to him about. I would probably, the obvious thing to do would be to have him talk about Batman. That'd be the obvious thing, right? Like what does he think about other major superheroes that he's not gotten to tackle? Or like, actually what I would do, so if that was the condition and he had to stand by that condition, that I could ask him anything and he would have to talk about it no matter what it would make him look like, I would ask him what he really thinks about DCEU stuff. That's what I would do. I would make him break down BVS and Justice League, and we do it after Snyder Cut, and I'd be like, you have to talk honestly about Snyder Cut.
Yeah, just have him do like a master class. You know, the master class, I always get those ads on Facebook, but like where they teach like a course on what they're good at. He'll do a master class on running a universe on the DCEU. Just use that as his example the whole time.
Writer, I have a question about Apocalypse. Why didn't the guy who played Stryker in Origins reprise the role? Is Danny Huston 80s Stryker in the original X-Men timeline like New Mutants? I don't know the background of that as far as why they didn't go back to him, except he is not as young as the guy they chose to put in Days of Future Past that came back for Apocalypse, and that's the same guy, right? And he would have to be younger than he looked in Origins because his dad is in First Class in 1962, and then 11 years later you have, or what, 9 years later you have, 11 years later you have his son William Stryker. So he's like 20 something. He's like, because you have a mention of his kid in 62, but that would have made him like 12, 13 or something probably. So that's probably the reason that they didn't go back to him. But also, we don't reference anything from Origins after Origins as far as I'm aware. Like, that's retconned very quickly. And it's the only thing I can think of in the X-Men universe, as much as we're constantly cherry-picking retcons, where you're easily able to write that out entirely wholesale. This is a thing I talked about with Apocalypse also, where Singer likes to cherry-pick and go, these are the things I like from X3, these are the things I don't, and you just have to, scene by scene, decide what counts and what doesn't, because they liked Kitty Pryde enough to put her in Days of Future Past, and there's a couple other things here and there that are referenced, and clearly X3 happened, and we even flash to it in the Wolverine too, and then you go to Apocalypse, and again, you got Angel again. And you're like, okay, well, that doesn't really make any sense. So Kitty Pryde's there, but also Angel is a teenager in both of these time periods, decades apart. Okay! So, yeah, I think Origins wholesale you can write off.
Except for the bone claws. Ryder says it's referenced in Days of Future Past. Is he talking about the bone claws?
Maybe just the bone claws, yeah. I think that's about it, though, and that's just an aesthetic thing. I mean, I don't know if that by itself says, look, that movie happened, but I see what you're saying then. Wow, we're already over 2 hours. Is there anything else that we've got to tackle?
No, the last one is just from Dimwit a Monkey. He says, not a question, but here's to another great show. So. Oh,
Stassi says that Xavier sees something from Origins when he goes through Wolverine's memories. I didn't realize that. I never noticed that.
That's weird. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Oh, thanks, Dimwit Monkey. Appreciate it, man. All right, well, folks, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed our X-Men theme show. You guys were awesome. Thanks for all the questions. This was a really fun, eclectic assortment of things. And thanks for all the X-Men stuff. We actually got to keep this mostly an X-Men theme show. That was really fun. And mostly movies, which is great, because I actually know something about that. And anyway, you guys are awesome. We will see you again next time. We are going to be back on Thursday for another one. It will probably be an Ask Me Anything show, unless some major news comes out that we got to chat about. At that point, it's been real unpredictable lately. Who knows? Anything could happen. We could find out that Patrick Stewart is indeed going to be playing Xavier again. Who knows? Anything that won't happen. Anything is possible, though.
Anything. He's going to be in X-Men, but he's going to be playing Picard. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, great! Disney also buys up that property, but despite what they had done to Star Wars before they made a thing that I liked with Mandalorian, I'd still rather them have Star Trek right now, honestly, than CBS and Paramount. Anyway, once again, we appreciate you guys. We'll see you again soon, and Superhero Rewind on Friday on Apocalypse, 7 o'clock that night. Look forward to that. In the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and that was DJ Martinez.
It was me.
Later, folks.